the way that we've interacted in the digital space has changed fundamentally, whether you like it or not. So you think about a Google search you could run right now. You're probably no longer hitting, first 3-page link. You're reading the AI overview. And so I challenge any firm to open up, a web page and just type in your name and see what that AI overview is giving. If you haven't put out consistent content in the spaces that are relevant, you might not get the most up-to-date answer. But what you put out internally is incredibly important and in the digital sphere on your website. But how you interact in different digital spaces is now even more important.
Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Mashup. I'm your host, Joe Anthony, Principal Gregory, and the moderator for these fun chats we have with industry luminaries and experts in the world of marketing. Today, awesome episode stacked up here. We've got Jack Casady from Beck, Bode and Greg Banasz from Steward Partners. Both guys have been in the world of marketing, in the world of financial services for a period of time now. So excited to have both of you chime in. And again, like many of these episodes, you're making new friends as we go. Jack and Greg haven't met before. Hey, listen, to get us started, Greg, give us a little bit of background of yourself, how you got your seat. I don't know if if you dreamed you want to do this when you grew up or what it was, but give us some context or where you are in the world of marketing and how you got there.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. It's great meeting you, and Jack, great to be on with you as well. I started my career back in 1992 at a little firm out of Baltimore called Legg Mason. Basically started out for my first 10 years learning the business in roles such as operations, back office work. I even spent some time in compliance. And then through that experience, I was able to connect with a regional manager, divisional manager, in the DC area, right down the road, and became a little bit more involved in regional administrative work, of ultimately into branch management, even some team coaching, helping advisors and branches grow and evolve. And that led me to Steward Partners about 12 years ago, back when it was just a dozen of us. And the concept of the recruiting and helping grow and all that really helped me expand a little bit more of my creative expertise or background. And so I was able to jump into the business development and marketing role. And so really my role here now today has evolved into really two main objectives. One, helping the firm brand and tell its story. And then, of course, I help RIA teams and advisors with their own individual practices as well. So that's kind of what brought me to today. 32 years later, it's been an exciting journey.
Awesome, Greg. And so, Jack, you and I have known each other in the past, and then you've more recently ascended to the throne of marketing leadership at your RIA. Tell us more about how you got there.
So I just joined Beck Bode about a year ago, and it's been such a great movement. So I originally started in the industry, much like you. I was an unpaid summer intern that kept showing up at a large asset manager in Boston called Putnam Investments. And always knew I wanted to do marketing and always loved financial services because it's a really, really hard problem to solve, right? I always joke that, it's easy to sell Coca-Cola. It tastes great on a summer day. You have great visuals. People just connect with it out the gate. It's really hard to connect with money and long-term planning and very complex topics, right? And so had fallen in love with the kind of art and science of financial service marketing. Loved my time at Putnam from, working with really, really smart individuals, having an in-house agency and studio and anything you need at a moment's notice. But really wanted to understand, what it would be like to build something from the ground up. So for the past 3 years, I had joined a small fintech startup called Your Stake, kind of running their marketing and working with founders to say, okay, how do you scale a business and how do you interact with advisors? But really missed kind of the wealth side. And so had found Beck Bode. We're based out of Dedham, Massachusetts, but have offices in New Hampshire and Traverse City. They had grown through succession and had kind of an interesting influx of what happens when you have to bring in other advisors outside of the founders. And it's been amazing to help kind of tell that next generation story for them. Really partner with advisors across the way to say, where do we play to your strengths, and how do we bring full firm support to you? And it's been a great ride so far.
Well, I have to say that the two of you both wear marketing hats, but I know your journeys are completely different in terms of how you got there. One thing I do think is the same, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're both the first to wear that title of head of marketing or CMO at your companies for different reasons,
Mhm.
right? And so, Greg, you use the word business development and marketing together, and Jack, I know a little bit of your background, so sometimes marketing isn't just a definition; it should be a catch-all bucket for anything helping the firm grow,
Yep.
right? So let's do this for this conversation. I think the world of marketing has changed dramatically, particularly the last 3 to 5 years as it relates to RIA firms and the effort to institutionalize marketing. Let's talk about what really defines marketing today and what we feel falls onto that bucket and how that have changed. And Jack, you're rolling up your sleeves, getting started at Beck Bode, or last year. So you really, it's this is
Yeah.
fresh. What is marketing for RIAs? How should firms either in the midst of growing their business or wanting to get started with marketing? How should they be thinking about what falls in that bucket?
I think it's a great question, and really has changed, as you brought up too, where really it's the combination of sales and marketing together. As far as I see it, there's a great saying that sales soothes all problems. I think that's really true in this space where we're all focused on growth. Really focused on organic growth on our side, right? And marketing can be a really, really interesting way to solve that problem because sometimes it's re-engaging a brand story or presentation, or it's marketing in the small sense of you're sitting down with an advisor, and Greg, I imagine you do this a lot, where you go, okay, let's tell your story because the way that that advisor is going to connect to a certain subset of individuals is going to help the firm overall grow, and also help create kind of a funnel that they can manage and run with down the lane. And so marketing is, yes, a multi-hat job and endeavor, but it's also incredibly fun in my eyes because you're always learning, right? You're never stuck on, this is the playbook and we're going to do it. And if we do it this way, you're going to grow X%. That has really changed in the past few years. There are tactics that you can bring out of your toolbox, but it really comes down to how do we make really strong relationships last in the long term?
Well, and then Greg, I'm sure you're going to have a different answer to this question for a number of reasons, but partly because the scale of Steward is different than one Jackson, and you've also been in your seat for about a dozen years, at least according to what you shared. And so, how does that world of marketing and your purview fit? And how do you see that? Like, what really belongs in marketing today?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I love how Jack, kind of married up the sales and marketing, or at least understands and made a point to say they're different, and they are. And what I like to say is, when you think about marketing and the process people still have to go through to truly create a marketing plan, I kind of simplify it a little bit. I break it up into three separate lanes. There's a branding lane, there's a communications lane, and then there's that practice management of business development lane. Now, that could be growth, that could be efficiency, whatever it is. But nevertheless, to get advisors or RIAs to understand marketing concepts, especially when they're new to marketing or saying, I know we need to do marketing, I just don't know what we need to do. Um, so we do try to at least define it and say, listen, there's a specific agenda or project we're going to talk about when it comes to branding your practice. Totally different. It's going to be client communication. Eventually, all the lanes will merge. We all know that. But, to get them to understand at least the concept of what marketing will mean to sales and closing, they have to, go through the process. So marketing for us, when we sit down with RIAs and advisors, has to be, to Jack's point, that fun conversation. I know that we're going to talk later about technology and AI, but one thing I always like to say is marketing still has that creative strand
Mm.
where AI hasn't quite taken over yet. So the level of creativity and fun and all this can still be unique to the marketing role and overall objective for our team.
Greg, I like the analogy you use about how they're all separate lanes, but they eventually merge together. I think one of the things for sure is that we're looking at a world where what falls under the world of marketing and growth is fragmented, where there's so many different channels and ways to reach your audience, connect with the people you need to help grow your business. For firms like Steward, I know that attracting advisors is as important as helping those advisors attract clients. And so you think about the dispersion of those lanes. what does a marketer do when you know full well across the industry there's probably an underinvestment in overall marketing talent? Do when you realize there's all these channels to play in and all these lanes, and as you talk about in different audiences, what are your recommendations for firms that are trying to get their arms around all of that? And Greg, I know I'll start with you first here because you have that real bifurcated need to engage advisors and clients. How did you get your arms around that, knowing that there has been this sort of a continuing fragmentation?
Yeah, and it starts really with, you know, what kind of interest do they have in the marketing process? I'll be honest with you, a lot of the conversation you have to start with, what are your intentions here? What do you want to do at the end of the day? Because marketing either can be just a little part of the equation or a big part. So once I find out really what their objectives or their goals are, then we could start having that marketing discussion on how we can achieve whatever it is. Could be growth, could be efficiency, could be just a better client service model, could be something where they just need to tell their story better, right? So it becomes this very interesting conversation where if you start to find out if they are going to be a power user of marketing, then great. We could start talking about the menu of products and services and what we need to outsource, what we want to bring in house, et cetera, et cetera. But if they're just got a little interest in marketing, that's where the conversation gets a little bit tougher. And the idea of finding what their genuine interest in doing is so important. I get people all the time who say, listen, I want to engage with my next gen wealth class, but social media is a 4-letter word in my house. Fine. We'll just avoid that. And we'll talk about other marketing ideas and concepts because you're not going to do it. No matter how great I say social marketing is as a result and show you all of the advisor testimonials who've done it. If they're not interested or for some reason they're pushing away, they're just not going to do it. So you've got to find out what their genuine interest is. And then we could start getting into the dialogue about menu of options, services, outsourcing certain things. And I love outsourcing. You're going to hear me say that a lot. I love putting the hands of marketing putting the role of marketing into the hands of experts if that's not your area of expertise. And so as long as they understand your firm's compliance and rules of the road, it could be a huge win-win.
Awesome. And Jack, you're coming at it from a different angle. I know you're an idea guy, but oftentimes when you don't have an army around you, the execution becomes an issue of prioritization, right? And how do you do that? How would you address that question, sort of like diffuse areas of opportunity and only so much time in a day to do it? Like, how are you wrangling that? And what guidance would you give other firms in your position in terms of getting your arms around the marketing mix?
Yeah, and Greg, I love what you said about sitting down with advisors and understanding where they're going to be the most confident and authentic. So I think so many times they go, well, I should do this because it's the right thing to do. But you can really just tell when it's not meshing with them. And that message doesn't come off the best way that it could. But if you sit down with them and they go, hey, I love doing this and I'm really passionate about it, then you put on your marketing hat and go, okay, how can we figure out this problem, right? How can we make this feel uniquely you? You can get in front of those next gen clients in the right space to just bring the best both marketing ability and sales ability in the right place. I'm very lucky enough that I work with a team of about 7 advisors that relatively all like to do different things, and so you go, okay, I'm going to allocate my time towards your strength. We've kind of had a big thesis this year around really bringing events back forward and creating spaces for clients and prospects to actually engage one another in the real space, and then use digital as an amplification layer, while also working with our 2 managing partners and founders, mainly in the digital lane, to scale their presence, vision, and culture. So it's been a great kind of combination of where can we be efficient in time and presence? Because really, it's just me in a very very small team of help that can come in when possible, but also know that I have some advisors that I can have for an hour in a month, and how can we use that really effectively to reach their goals while looking at a year ahead, 2 years ahead, and go, okay, where do we want to be present, and how can we support your roles here in a way that makes sense for the firm and your energy? It's really really fantastic.
Well, both of you have hit on the note of what's achievable and doable as it relates to the personalities that are being marketed or need the marketing support, right? And I think that's so important where I love to be able to tell people in my shoes, hey, here's a silver bullet that's going to win in all cases and just rinse and repeat and just send over that check now. Like that'd be a great marketing model. But obviously, the achievability and feasibility is important. The other part of it too is, all right, well, if you're going to spend time doing it, you want to see results. And so I want to take a sidestep to the right here and talk a little bit about when you are sitting down with the advisor and you talk about what they're willing to do. The flip side is also what's going to have the outcomes they
Mm.
want. What are you doing to track those outcomes? At what level? Like for example, I know what you might expect in the value and benefit from PR in the first 6 months or a year would be different than how PR might play a role in a more mature situation where you've been doing promotion for 3 to 5 years. And so I'd love for you to talk about a little bit, and Jack, I'll start with you. What are you doing to sort of monitor effectiveness? How long of a leash do you give certain things to making sure that they either trend in the right direction or need to course correct? These are things that, frankly, firms that either have been doing this for a while and want to make sure they're doing it right, or frankly, they're just hiring their first jacks to help run on the show. They need to be thinking about. And you talk about what's doable is also what's going to get the results. So let's get into that a little bit,
Yeah,
Jack.
I think especially from my role, kind of coming in, is they had used outsourced agencies kind of in sprints, and so they go, oh, we had some great traction, and then it wasn't consistent. So my kind of first charter coming in was, hey, let's bring a level of consistency, both to our message, our engagement, our kind of overall brand momentum, and that's kind of the large high level. And then also working with advisors in kind of that hand to hand space and say, okay, what's going to be a win within 3 months, right? And then what's that lane going to be like? And then how are we going to build up your funnel over time to help amplify that? And so it's understanding both, when we sit down and have an idea, is this a more awareness stage? Start bringing people more into our fold, and you're going to be okay with that. We're all going to talk about that and what that ROI is going to look like. Or are you really focused on, I need to convert X amount of prospects this quarter, this half a year, or this year ahead, and what's going to be the right tact to do that, and knowing that you can also support your long term goals. And so, really, for me, it's that initial conversation. And Greg, I imagine it's the same thing for you, but expectations. Because I think that's missed so many times. Where you go, well, we did it, and I want to see results. And you go, well, based on what we did, that's a really great long term play, but you're not going to have a client come in tomorrow and say, I want to invest, right? And so being really honest and intentional about, what those plans are and what our 3 month goal is and 1 year goal is, and then also how we track that on the other end. We utilize Advise-On mainly for our advisor client relationship CRM, but then on my end we utilize HubSpot as well for kind of that true marketing engine, right? And so it's taking those great digital signals and then marrying them to those end kind of investment results, and working in both uh, both systems to understand the outcome.
And Greg, how do you look at reviewing results? I mean, Jack had some really good points there in terms of not only what the front end objectives are, but also how to track again using different tools. But you know, I imagine as Steward, since you've been doing this for a while, you probably been through some cycles where you've really seen things play out that are been very effective, and you got to build off on other things that, oops, probably shouldn't do that anymore. Love to get the insight from someone's been in your chair for 12 years.
Yeah, and this is a great question because I think it really uh, helps gain interest in marketing objectives and projects because up until just a few years ago, the you talk to an advisor on RIA and their only way of gauging results from marketing is, yeah, Greg, I couldn't tell you if someone went to my website and became a client. Well, that's not the only measurable statistic in marketing. And what you do is you start showing them all of the digitized scorecards and analytics. To Jack's point, HubSpot does a great job with it. But you could even go down all the way to, I've got a metallic business card here with a dynamic QR code on it that I scan at every conference and panel I go to. And when I come back on a monthly basis, I could see all the people who've scanned my card and who I need to follow up with. I mean, it's all today marketing, everything from hyperlinks, engagement rates, time spent on a website, clickable links, call to action pages, all this is trackable. And what I love about uh, the marketing process that advisors are starting to wake up to is where I may not be able to make that direct line of client interaction with marketing to net new asset data. I can see trend lines moving in the right direction based on my marketing efforts. And when you get back to an earlier question you made, which was, what are advisors really stepping up and having interest in? I can show them all the scorecard data. I can show them all the analytics. It does help drive the conversation. But when it comes to results, once I get to that conversation, and Jack, made a good point too about what advisors are truly interested in doing. It's not always about me telling them what they need to do. It's just showing them what other advisors have done and accomplished. I have the benefit of being here 12 years and seeing the first 3 advisors in 2 temporary locations when we started this company to today with 80 offices and 300 advisors and seeing all these different practices. I have video and commentary that I can easily point to and say, great, you want to engage in media? Here, let me show you someone who has done this successfully and where they're seeing the results and how we're tracking it. And by the way, I get back to that other comment I made. Outside CMOs do this all the time. They report back to you with data cards, scorecards, marketing statistics, and it just helps drive the conversation and gain more interest.
Well, you think about the discussion from the advisor input side of things, right? Where if you're building a brand, advisors are the human first touch point. Yes, they might run into your business via the web or some sort of AI or Google search, but the reality is very often their first human interaction with the business is the advisors that are out there. And so there's a constant wrestle. I don't care if you have 500 million under management or 50 billion or whatever the numbers are. You need to balance what you're doing from a marketing and storytelling standpoint from the firm level as well as from the individual advisor level. And juggling that probably requires not just a game plan, but also some education. And Jack, from your perspective, knowing that you're the first person sitting in your seat, um, how has that come up where you're balancing sort of the firm wide tone setting from a marketing standpoint with delivery and the marketing front that supports how individual advisors work?
That's a great question. It definitely comes down to how can you help all of the advisors, under one roof, tell the same, united story. So if someone's working with us in Traverse City or New Hampshire or in Dedham, Massachusetts, they'll understand who we are, what we stand for, our process, while also knowing that there's a unique story that each of us, are going to tell and you're going to connect with, and that's really a strength. That's not something to hide. And when you can kind of marry those two things, whether it's a brand level asset that we create that then we give to our advisors to say, I think this could really help you in your efforts. This is how we might want you to go about saying it, but what we really want you to do is sit down and say, how are you going to connect with a prospect or an existing client to tell this story? And so a lot of what I've worked on here is what's that overall advisor script and playbook that we want to make sure we hit on these key points. But we want to create the opportunity for you to really add your own lens to it, because that's really where the magic happens. Again, I keep talking about authenticity, right? People can sense when it's not, and being really a trust based business, flexing that muscle is incredibly, incredibly important.
Hey, Jack, I want to hear Greg's take on this, but honestly, you just said something that's going to take me off my chain of thought, which is this trust based
Mm.
business. And so let's go down this little line of question. There are a few different tools in the toolbox today to help support how firms are viewed with a level of trust, right? I mean, after all, that's the
Mm.
currency. I'm not going to give my $10 million portfolio or my $1 million portfolio to someone I just don't feel
Mm.
good about, right? What tools are you all deploying to build that trust? Obviously, there's Google reviews and testimonials, and you can do PR and other things like that. But what has really been working at your firms? And Greg, I'll pick on you since Jack sort of accidentally kicked this off. But yeah, I'd love to hear what is working in terms of building that trust quotient for Steward.
Yeah, and one of the first things that comes up when you ask that trust question is what do clients say about you, right? And whether it's a already an established relationship like a family or a work colleague or just someone who is very happy with your overall engagement and service. So the nice thing is many firms, including our firm, it has permitted client testimonials. Now. Uh, the good news is you can get into video, you can get into text related testimonials, you can make it obviously branded in your own shape, form, or fashion. But the idea though of having actual clients say good and positive things about you is very important. Something that's along these lines and not utilized that much, but I think is a great concept is client advisory boards. I think when practices put together their not always their biggest, but their best clients, where they're getting the referrals from, who talks about them the most, and they put them all in a room or some sort of appreciation event and say, we're thinking of expanding or doing something different in the practice. What would you suggest? You're our best clients. You give us the best feedback. What would you suggest we do? And so you start to get moving from that, what I say, moving from the golden rule of client service to the platinum rule, which is, treat people the way, you want to be treated, where the platinum rule is no, open up your ears and treat people the way they want to be treated. And
Mm.
so it's a much different concept, and it does get to that level of intimacy where your point about trust is I'm trusting these clients to tell us what we're doing well, what we can be doing better, how we can tweak things, and maybe even I can help educate them on telling our story in the way that we like to be told. I just don't want to be known as the stock guy or the investment woman that they have as a relationship. I really want them to understand our story. So we let down our guard. We open up that door of trust to say, give us honest feedback, and it tends to work, and it can help with just the way the team evolves over time.
So, Jack, how would you build off that? You talked about client advisory boards and client feedback and testimonials. What's working for you all? How you look to solve that trust equation?
Yeah, and Greg, I'll build off that piece too. Asking clients their honest feedback is the hardest thing to do, but the most helpful thing to hear. And then the second leg of that is taking it to heart and actually making those changes, right? And so if you have some of the best clients in the world that have been with you for no matter how many number of years, hearing their honest feedback of I'd really like to see this, and going back to the team and go, how can I make this happen, right? That's so important. To also look at, okay, what are your levers of growth? If you look at it, that really helps referrals down the lane, and then creating opportunities for those best clients to bring those close to them and kind of bring them into this world and say, okay, I've been working with them for 25 plus years. I couldn't imagine anyone else. And they'll drive that referral behind closed doors, which is really amazing because you've built that. I love that platinum rule of service. That's fantastic. And then the other leg is really video for us, whether it's testimonial client stories or just advisor interactions. We were lucky enough to have an extra office space in here, and we built an in-house studio because we really believe in the power of video to tell that story. Content that's text-based is fantastic. It's a great start. But the second you could sit down and see someone face to face and see how they interact and talk about problems or how they've made things possible over time, medium of video is fantastic to do that.
So, and Jack, I love that, and obviously we're big believers in on our end as an agency. We see the difference it can make in how firms are connecting and building their brand visibility. I want to go back to the question before that, before I got sidetracked, because I think it actually really applies to the whole bifurcation. We talked about the bifurcation between thinking about marketing at a sort of brand home office level versus the
Yeah.
advisor level. But particularly some of the remarks you made, Greg, around some of these things, the client advisory boards and stuff like that, lead me to think that there's also a structure that happens where, um, in terms of figuring out how to sort of market first from the brand perspective versus the advisor perspective, it's also how you make sure that they're doing the reviews
Right.
right way and have that support. So, like, talk us through that question from earlier. in terms of how you'd respond to it, and like what are you doing to like set the tone for the steward level, and then set the tone for the advisor level in those situations.
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? I mean, you do have to, when you go through the whole, and I don't like to use the word recruiting, but partnering process with someone, they do have to. It has to be a two-way street. It has to be you want them, and they want you. Because if someone's just joining or a firm or an entity now for a deal, or because they hate where they are, it's going to be short lived. You want to make sure that you're articulating to your clients why I'm joining this partnership, why I'm part of this new, and so whatever that brand is, whatever that story is, one of our taglines is independence with infrastructure. Most of the folks that and RIAs and teams and sole practitioners uh, aren't necessarily running away from something. We're trying to make the story about how they're running towards something, because that's what they have to tell their clients at the end of the day. I'm not leaving so and so because they're a terrible place to work and blah blah. They've been clients with you for I don't know how long, but they're not going to be too happy if you are telling them something bad about where you were all this time. So you do have to have a story that you're going to embrace, but become part of that new, like you said, localized independent story. So we like to say, at least at Steward, that everyone is a partner here. We want you to have your brand or your identity, whether it's a family name or some new branded team name. And all we're asking, or all we actually, kind of make part of the process, is that we're a tagline, we're a small script at Steward Partners underneath. And at the end of the day, there has to be something in that story that allows you or permits you to be proud to have that Steward Partners brand, right? And so it could be, one of our, aspects, unique value proposition, so to speak, is that everyone here is an equity owner. So, you become an owner in the company, regardless if you're a secretary out in Wichita, Kansas, or the CEO of the company. So everyone has some sort of, uh, commonality. And it's one of the few places where, when we also do a distribution at the end of the year for all people who are equity holders, and people who are entrepreneurial get this, especially the clients who are entrepreneurial. They understand this. Okay, good. You're an owner. You have a voice in the firm. You can help with the direction. But even the support in the branch are saying, "Hey, why are you printing on colored paper when you could be printing on black and white? That eats into my dividend each year. Let's be a little bit more conscious of things like this." So your brand, your company, does have to have value to your localized story, and we make sure that even during the process where it's that two-way street and we're welcoming you and you're welcoming us, that's very loud and clear and easily articulated.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about the idea of advisors being able to carry their own brand, hang out their own
Hmm.
shingle. And there's been a lot of discussion of what's going to be best for brand equity versus best for the sense of advisor independence. And sometimes I actually laugh, Greg and Jack, because some advisors, when they ask what makes you independent, like I want to have my own name on the door. That's independence. For other people, it's just a freedom of choice in terms of how they run their business.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Most of these firms, when they think about projecting independence, don't really have a marketing or PR strategy to make sure that it's coming across. Like if that's a value, I want to be independent. I want to, and it's of all they may internally want to run their business that way or have an idea. But usually, as far as it gets from a marketing standpoint, it could be those that prefer to carry it's the Joe Anthony advisors at Steward, right? They're not necessarily thinking of what does that really mean in terms of how I'm articulating what I do and how I promote my business and grow. Um, when you want to get points like that across, whether it's the independents or others, what are the steps for like individual advisors or firms should take when they're thinking about articulating those key value propositions, whether it's independence? Like, what do you go through? And Jack, you might be fresh from this exercise since you're just about a year in. How do you get the team thinking along those lines of getting that point out again? Whether it's independence, whether it's alignment with the client, What are the fundamentals of really setting up your marketing to do the trick that you wanted to do, which is getting people to think about you a certain way?
Mm. Yeah, a word I kind of keep crawling to is just intention. So sitting down with the team overall, with your managing partners, founders, whoever it might be, and say, okay, a year from now, where do you want to be and how do you want to project? And sit down and really be honest of if that's where you want to go to, what needs to change, what story needs to stay consistent, or what do we need to kind of revamp to get that amplification in the right lever, right? When it comes to the advisor side, we're mainly focused on M&A opportunities of advisors that are looking towards that kind of next part of their life in retirement. And so for us, it's those kind of sole practitioners or very small practices that are going, okay, what's next for my life? It's now kind of time for me to capture my dreams while also being in control of my journey. We're not private equity backed. We're not going to get X amount of multiples on your practice, and we know that. But where can we really shine? Well, that's a really honest conversation, right? It's that culture fit. It's being able to let advisors be in charge of their timeline, and saying, okay, if you want to just focus on those relationships, we can handle everything else for you. We run everything in house here, and so if you just want to take a little bit of a seat back, we can help support that. Or if you go, okay, I'm really ready to move on, we can make that happen too. And so being very honest with, okay, we're not going to market to everyone. Not every practice is going to be the right fit, but knowing what fits is so true. And then on the client side, it's looking at those client relationships and saying, okay, who have we had a lot of great growth with, great relationships, and where can that be scaled across the right places, right? You talk about, if you market to everyone, you're marketing to no one. And so sitting down with us as a firm and say, okay, who's really going to be the right fit based on, how we kind of run investments and run our process. And also sitting down with the advisors going, okay, where are you the strongest at? Where are you going to, be the most compelling person in the room? And how do we marry those two things to help firm growth overall?
Well, I think you articulated it nicely, Jack, in terms of running into some of those issues. Greg, when you think about going through this process from the steward
Yeah.
level, where you're thinking, all right, how am I projecting our voice from uh, the so-called the home brand, the parent brand? What are some of the things that you're going through yourself and with your team and making sure that those messages are getting out there the right way, and you feel like you're positioning and articulating the firm the right way?
Yeah, our industry is very, very, it's tough to define brand value. Firm value, enterprise value, I mean, that goes into the structure, the way you're set up, the ownership piece, et cetera, et cetera. To Jack's point, if you have, private equity or if you have other owners that have a stake in your entity, but brand value, I mean, you look at firms like Apple. I mean, I don't know what the actual enterprise value is for the brand, but I know it's a very high percentage. Um,
Mm,
it's difficult, not impossible, but difficult to have that brand value at the advisor or the RIA level. At the firm level, yes, it gets into the accounting, how you're set up. We understand all that. But what I will say is if you're trying to add some sort of, forget the value side itself, but encourage the brand, the emphasis, the story. There are important things that clients uh, will gravitate towards. Testimonials we talked about earlier. It does get into just how unique your practice is, of course. But what I definitely like to say is it's one of these things where if you take your practice and you start putting language and words around it and seek out an expert in someone who understands what the brand is supposed to mean, then you can start weaving out how the website, how my brand guide, how all this stuff should basically message who I am in different places, whether it's client event, whether it's on merchandise, whether it's on a digital asset, or whether it's just sitting down and explaining, who you are and what you do and why you should be, engaged with us. But again, media engagement's another great one. recognition and awards, people will gravitate towards these and see that you have value in what you do, and you're not just some other Wikipedia type of description as
Yeah.
a financial advisor.
Can I piggyback off
Hey,
that?
go,
I
please,
just
Jack.
as you were talking, I kind of think about the allegory of brand is really perception, and perception can also drive value. And so I think in the world of fee compression, right? We're not a race to the bottom kind of firm, but really, one of the things that we keep talking about is in the next 5 years, how do we think more like Amex, less like Mastercard, more like the Ritz Carlton, less like the Holiday Inn, right? And so being able to say, okay, this is what we're trying to achieve. Is what we're doing in the digital space, the physical space, website, all those assets tying up to those kind of North Star movements, right? And thinking less about, what is it that is perceived value and more is what is that perceived feeling and emotion that you get from the firm. And you hear that at the client level, at the advisory board, you hear it from the advisors, in-house and everyone between, right? Like the most important backbone of our job is client service. So how is your client service team doing? That's like your gold lever for growth if you don't think about it.
Well, and I think the client experience is very much a throttle point in marketing. Obviously, if you believe that trust or referrals and things like that are breeders of growth, if not directly correlated to growth, then you have to believe that client service and client experience is a big part of that. Um, on that note, when you think about referrals, obviously referrals have been a big part of advisor growth over the years. But over the last several years, other tools have popped up. Now we see we're here. We're in January, and since the first of the year, BNY Pershing and Goldman have both come out and said, "Hey, we're going to get firms involved in our referral programs." Um, let's talk about that a little bit. I don't know if either one of you in your firms participate either with custodian referral networks or use Smart Asset, but how prevalent do you see these programs being? At what juncture should firms consider using these tools again, whether custodian driven or otherwise? Because we're seeing obviously, a wide cross section. Certain firms feel like they don't want to give up any of the basis points associated with new assets managed. Others crave the idea of being a preferred provider, at least in the mind's eye of the people that go through the custodians. And so, tell us how that fits in your landscape in terms of marketing and growth, and where referral marketing in that sense sits with your firm today. And Greg, I'll give you the first shot of that. Like, what is Steward doing there, and where do you see value, and how do advisors and firms maximize their participation?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and we participate in the Smart Asset, Wiser Advisor, those client referral programs. It's not for everyone. You definitely have to have a process that complements what the actual activity is. You got to remember, there's other advisors competing for the same lead at times. It's not inexpensive. So again, it has to be paired up with the right advisor, someone who's going to do massive amounts of spreadsheet tracking, drip print campaigns, etc. So the idea is to give a variety of organic growth opportunities, or I'll say platforms for them to choose from. Again, this gets back to a matter of taste and appetite. If someone's not really big on the that referral process about, oh, I'm competing against three other people, I don't like that, I have a very unique way of doing it, et cetera, then fine. You may be better suited for, say, a LinkedIn Sales Navigator Enterprise Edition, and get training on that and understand how that can yield windows of opportunity for you to gain leads. So there's multiple programs that we offer that say we will not only help support your practice, but we have discounted features, or if you're at a certain category within the firm, meaning that you're already a strong grower, we will continue to invest in your growth, and we'll provide some equity or some capital towards that growth program, and continue to piggyback off of your success. But tell us what you want, tell us what you want to do. So we're not just saying, yeah, you can have this program, and you just may be spending money. And again, we're getting back to that profit share formula at the end of the day. We're making sure that people are using the tools and the resources that either one, they've seen success in the past, they just want us to step on the gas or move up to a next level. or they want to grow and they said, we're thinking of doing this program, but we'd like to talk to some other advisors within Steward who have yielded some success.
And that's good insight. Jack, how do you address that at your firm? Obviously, different scale than Steward.
Yeah.
When you think about the referral programs, where are you all playing right
Yeah,
now?
so we've not brought in any kind of referral networks like that. It's just more of a distraction that is helpful when it comes to looking at ROI, dollars spent, and the amount of time that it takes to really nurture these leads through and convert them. We're not at a scale where it's going to be effective. But really, when it comes to referrals outside, it's now creating the opportunities for those clients to engage in referrals in a meaningful way, mainly through the physical space. So partnering with advisors on where they're passionate about, where can they meet existing clients and help bring them into the fold, so to say. That it is true, referral networks have gone through. I will say the referral networks now and in the age of AI are amazing towards what that technology is doing. You think back to the days of, or even now, like Ramsey network of referrals and what that is, towards now, like all the smart bidding technology that's allowed in free financial plan. I forget the tool that is married with it. Um, and Asova is the name. They have a really, really smart, bid engagement system that helps get around that. I'm bidding way past my dollar amount for the advisors. Technology is really, really changing that space. We're just not at a scale where it's going to be effective and more of a distraction for our advisors. And it's smart to know that too. There's a lot of tactics out there
Sure.
that seem great, but if you can't support it on the internal level, it's going to be more of a distraction than it is actually helping your growth. I think that's really, really important to think
Uh,
about.
That's really well said. And I've said on my podcast and obviously on stage a couple times, my belief with these referral programs from that are brokered externally, whether from a custodian or otherwise, you really need to be buttoned up and have a strong game plan for your own organic growth, independent of. And it's almost like the icing or the cherry on top, whatever, as opposed to the end of the heart of it. And so, I think you're doing yourself a real disservice if you're not building a core sustainable growth that isn't kind of compromised or diluted a little bit in terms of revenue, but also amount of complexity to really harvest the biggest benefit. So I think it's smart. At the same time, I also think that we're also at a period of time, segues in a little bit into the discussion on AI and marketing, is that because of the rise of AI and AI search, some of the utility for some of these platforms and things like that have actually changed. Just like rankings. Maybe so you might roll your eyes and think, "Oh, I'm a five-star wealth manager in South Jersey," or "I'm Barron's, 1,000 advisors. Who's going to see me at 947 on that list?" You know, those things have become relevant in a new way because of AI and AI search, and as has some other things. Let's dive into that right now. How are your firms engaging with AI and tools in marketing specifically, and for business growth? And how are you dealing with AI search as an adjunct to that? Jack, I know you came from a firm where AI was a
Yeah.
big underpinning what you're doing. So I'm sure you have some good insights. So I'll start with you. What are you doing in your role with these
Yeah.
tools?
I think the two biggest things when it comes to AI is one is the fundamental idea that like it's not a silver bullet, but the way that we've interacted in the digital space has changed fundamentally, whether you like it or not. So you think about a Google search you could run right now. You're probably no longer hitting that first 3 page link. You're reading the AI overview. And so I challenge any firm to open up, web page and just type in your name and see what that AI overview is giving. If you haven't put out consistent content in the spaces that are relevant, you might not get the most up to date answer. And it's one of those really small things that uh, we often don't think about because it's just, oh, of course it's going to pull in everything that it sees or everything on my website, and that's simply not the case anymore. That's what you put out internally is incredibly important and in the digital sphere on your website, but how you interact in different digital spaces is now even more important. So I think about how we had to ramp up our social media presence, our website presence, our YouTube presence, and even individuals LinkedIn's to understand what that overview is going to say is so important. And then also building up the infrastructure now, not 5 years from now, when it comes to schema markups on websites, or however other ways you want to look at, how your AI search is run and build that infrastructure now. Don't wait till it's too late, because the firms that have invested in it now are going to be leaps and bounds ahead of you than when you realize it was a problem.
And then,
Yeah.
Greg, what are you doing on your end
Yeah.
with AI and AI search and those tools related to it?
Yeah. Well, one thing that hasn't changed is the power of information is so important to an RIA and advisor. And what AI has done for the people who have explored some of the technology and taken a look into it, the AI has allowed you to get information, relevant information on either your existing CRM or some sort of prospect lead list that you may or may not have gotten just through your exhaustive search. I'm old enough to remember that data scientists, if you hired one, would be 100,000 plus a year. Well, some of the AI technology that does money in motion program, where they'll give you 12 different indicators on recent inheritance or job changes or new marriages, or new parents, new home insider sales, can all be on this dashboard where you can get this instant by either minutes or hours versus days and months and years, where you may or may not get them between your some of your outgoing calls or your email campaigns or even your client reviews. So this AI development, if you know how to incorporate it into your ecosystem, I think gets back to that old the power of information and how relevant it can be for marketing and that practice management sleeve of the lane I was describing earlier. Again, you can have all the information in the world at your fingertips, but if you don't have that brand and that client communication lane addressed properly, it sometimes will either fall on deaf ears or just become DOA once they are unimpressed with whatever your message or brand is. But again, I say the AI side of the equation. We have AI capabilities within our social media system that can help people track, their social media performance, their engagement rate, what they should suggest as future commentary, et cetera, et cetera. But my favorite tool right now for 2026 is the Wealth in Motion AI tools that have been introduced to our advisors.
Hmm.
Well, I think those sorts of advances give real time actionable ideas or
Yep.
tips for advisor to follow up on, and they know, and you never know when the cold prospect becomes warm until sometimes those things happen. So I think that's really compelling. I think for us, we've seen, we built the Gregory Influence Engine to help get our arms on our clients' purposes around how they're showing up in AI search, what's triggering it, why you're showing up under certain prompts, but maybe not others, how you're stacking up against near competitors, and but also realizing in doing that work, AI in terms of tracking itself has gotten crazy good in terms of being able to show us where, like, okay, we have Perplexity and Steward's ranking high here and Beck Bode isn't. And then over here on Copilot, it's the other way around. Why on the same search is it doing this, and what information is it drawing from to educate the answer engines of what's showing up? And so it's created another to-do list, but also one that's could be a very productive punch list. You think about a contractor finishing a job when they say, okay, here's the final punch list. These are the four things we have to tidy up before we get paid. For a marketer, if you said, hey, we know for a fact that if we do A, B, and C with our PR and work on these two, getting ranked in certain places, wherever it might be, you can solve for your presence. That's great because a lot of times in marketing, there's less definition, right? Like, will this make a difference? Well, in this case, the tools have gotten so far that you can have some definition around that. But Greg, you provided a great segue. You said for 2026, your favorite tool is this. And so our last big question before we get to our usual parting shot comments is, what do you think should be top of marketers' minds in 2026 as it relates to the world of RIAs and wealth management? What is something that you can see on the horizon mattering more than usual or reemerging? And I'd love for the two of you to share what you think. And Greg, I'll start with you. What should be on the top of mind of marketers in terms of taking advantage of what's out there?
Yeah, it's tough to pick one. We talked about a couple things that are extremely important. We talked about video. We talked about AI. induced money in motion commentary, and then something I talked about earlier, which I would probably have to say is my biggest focus in 2026 is the outsourced CMO. Far too often, when I sit down and talk to larger teams, high net worth teams, um, they have a genuine interest in marketing. Now, I haven't defined them as a power user yet. They haven't seen our full menu of services. In many cases, they're coming from someplace where either marketing wasn't permitted or you have to do whatever the firm gives you out of the box type of tech offering, or they just didn't have time or expertise or education to learn about marketing. So when they come here, I give them this, and I'm from New Jersey. I give them this New Jersey diner menu of options that they've never seen before, where they've got everything from breakfast to lunch to dinner at 24 hours a day. And they're like, yeah, this is just a little overwhelming. I'm like, don't worry, this is just to let you know you have choice. But if you truly have a genuine interest in achieving your goals and using marketing, then I suggest putting your marketing efforts in the hands of an expert outside that has already understood our compliance process, can understand the scoring mechanism or the analytics that you desire, but also is going to help you achieve your results. So the outsourced CMO program also weaves into my favorite thing, which is making sure your brand is sharp, it's unique, it's worth telling, and clients can easily understand it and even repeat it to referrals or centers of influence. But the outsourced CMO program, to me, as long as it's incorporated well within your partnership or your ecosystem, I do think makes a lot of sense, because marketing is getting, as fun as it is for us, it's still a foreign entity for a lot of advisors. It's still a very unknown process, and
Hmm.
and they're at least opening up the idea to say, okay, I like to do marketing. I just don't know how, or I just don't know where to start. Well, we'll help with all that. But your best bet to go from 250 million to 500 million, or 500 million to a billion, is to have this part of your system in the hands of an expert that can, show you some successes, examples, things that will work into your system. And then the outsourced CMO program also does something I'm a big fan of, and it provides you with at least a basic brand guide. Far too often do I see social media, websites, marketing content, and none of it syncs up with each other. I'm like, you got different fonts here, different color schemes here, blah blah blah. It's great to have that in harmony, and usually an outsourced CMO could bring it all together. So that to me, Joe, is top of mind, and probably something I'm going to be utilizing a lot in 2026.
Well, I love the idea of encouraging and empowering a CMO level person to lead the charge. It's something that's been a big talking point for me. Jack, when you think about 2026, how would you answer that? What should be top of mind or in focus?
Yeah, well, it's funny, Greg. It's like I'm the in-source CEO here, CMO here, right? Where it's they've never had capability to actually consistently put out that message, or work with kind of the home office level to achieve what they've always wanted to. And so bringing that ability as just another layer of what Beck Bode can bring the advisors really has been a focus last year, and really going to be blown up this year for sure, where it's okay, we've had some success, and so now everyone's bought in, and how can we be effective in all of our voices and markets and things like that. So that's a great point you raise, and kind of the play we're doing here just flipped internally. I think for marketers overall, it's not getting too excited by AI in the idea of, well, if I'm not there, I'm not important. It's still leaning on kind of the individual stories and letting that drive connection. Because if you do that really well and really authentically, the AI will follow, right? And so being able to tell your story in a very very clear way has never been more important now than it has 100 years ago. Just the way that people can access that information is now very, very different. And so you could put all the right structures in for AI search, but if the content doesn't resonate,
Yeah.
then it's not really going to move the needle. And so it's taking
Yeah.
the AI structure that you need and marrying it with just beautiful stories in a full range of topics. And so marrying, what we all do here, it's like 1,000 years ago, we were all sitting around a fire telling a story. Well, now we're able to sit around the virtual fire and tell a story. But the way that we can connect is going to be that through line forever.
So great stuff. We're at the point in our pod where we ask our guests to give us a quick 15-second parting shot. Some piece of advice, insights, takeaways, prediction, anything you want to leave the audience. Give me a plug for yourself or your firm for all I care. But what's your parting shot? This is your chance to leave us all with something fun to chew on as we wrap up here. Jack, take it away. Give us your parting
shot is I recently got my GPT year in review. I am now a 3% user of chat, which I'm now very excited about because it's been amazing to see what I've been able to accomplish because I can kind of dissect parts of my brain to create repeatable functions. And it's also been the best creative partner I've ever had because you can talk to GPT and it'll let you brainstorm back and forth. And it's been just one of the best thought partners I've had. And I've had to be brutally honest with my work. It hurts, but it's great. So utilize
awesome.
the voice function in the best of ways.
Very cool. Greg, your turn.
Yeah, I would say, and I really haven't touched much on this, but I'll use it as my parting comment. You do need to have a diverse marketing offering as you're growing as an entity, as a firm. Not everyone is married to social media content or social media strategy. Not everyone enjoys being on TV or engaging with the media, but they might have a desire to do educational events or podcasts like these to communicate with clients. I do think that at the end of the day, advisors are looking to create some level of intimacy with their clients through marketing, whether that's much more engaging video content, did you know campaigns through newsletters, create that level. That's why I talk about that. And again, it was a comment from an old mentor, but go from that golden rule of client service to the platinum rule. Client advisory boards, hearing what people want from you and delivering on that. We talked about scorecards earlier, and I'll give one of this last parting comment here. I love when I hear teams who have some sort of new client engagement packet that involves, how did you hear about us? What were some of the deciding factors? Did you look us up online? They can use that data because we talked about this earlier, the power of information. They can use that data for future type of marketing and what's working and how people are seeing us, how people are viewing us. But I think you just need to have a lot of options and in-house expertise, but also that ability to go outside to bring in the experts that you just don't have bandwidth or time or patience sometimes to do. So that's my closing comment.
Well, hey, gentlemen, this has been terrific. I really appreciate it. Jack Casady from Beck, Bode, Greg Banasz from Steward Partners. Thank you both for joining this episode of Marketing Mashup. We look forward to seeing you out there in the wild.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Marketing Mashup, a production of Gregory. If you like what you heard, please listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.